Government shuts down? Who cares? What's up, everybody? What's up? Welcome aboard. It's Bubba's Bottom Line, and here we are once again with the report of the facts, the fast and the ever, and of course, my opinion. And we had the government shut down on Friday, and nobody cares, and nor should they. But we're going to talk about more of that when we get to our opinions later in the day. But markets did not react negatively. I mean, and of course, we saw on Friday brand new market highs. So at the end of the day, it is no big deal. And of course, it shouldn't be a big deal. And I think we're going to see how this is all going to play out over the next few days. But just one point in fact, out of all the government shutdowns, only since 1979 did the markets actually go lower off of the shutdown. So markets are at brand new highs once again. Looked like they were going to start to sell off a little bit. And of course, by Friday, they were up flying to the moon. Me and Frank Sinatra, flying me to the moon. But I think you did see some very interesting things that do indicate the markets may be topping. And that is, of course, we had a lot of volume and volatility last week, which is, it wasn't a lot in perspective to the big picture, but it was a lot compared to where we've been recently. So when we look at the overall view, we saw the volatility or the VIX index continue to climb. Even into many of these big rallies, we saw the markets going high. We saw the volatility climbing even into a market rally, eventually creating some particular sell-off. But we saw some interesting things, and I think these are things that you want to take away from and think about. Stocks like Boeing moving 3 and 4 and 5% a day is not logical from the type of stock that Boeing is supposed to be. Some of these wild swings in conservative stocks have become ridiculous. And all these are really warning signs of a market that's potentially coming to the end of its run. And we're not predicting it. Again, we say this all the time. We're not predicting it now, but we do see reasons to believe that the markets are reaching the upper end of how much farther they can go. And of course, this comes back down to every pundit is saying, well, this is the fastest 1,000-point gain in history. Well, gee, what a shock. He only had to move 4% to get that 1,000 points. It's not like it had to make a big move. It's the new high, record after record. Well, when you're at new highs and making new highs from there, it's not a big challenge. It's nice when you make a new high after you've seen the markets underwater and making a big charging move. When we have to move, basically 1 point up to make a new high, that does not really mean a heck of a lot. So, again, you can twist these stories any way you want. I think it's important to recognize that the pundits, advisors, and the brokers, they're all talking their book, all right? That's number one. If you think that this market is different than any other market, then you're going to end up in the crapper like everybody else does when these things do decide to change. And we're not saying that it's going to change today, tomorrow. We're just saying that you will end up, if you believe in listening to the pundits that they're talking their book because they need market rallies to continue to have ratings come in, which is how they get their advertising dollars. So if you think that that's the big deal, then you're going to be in for a rude awakening. Advisors and brokers, they make their money when investors are in the market on the long side, usually, and having all their money work, which is where they get their fees or their commissions. So again, talking their book, why would they tell you they think the markets might be willing to sell off here when it's going to take away from their potential profit? Remember, life comes down to two things. One of them is money, and this is about money. Make no mistake, it's about money from the investor to the advisor to the pundits. Everybody's about the same thing. It's money. And of course, that's why we see margin debts make new record highs every single day, because you've got a bunch of people that are trying to buy stuff they don't need with money they don't have and they can't afford, and yet they continue to do so. Why? Because the money is too easy. Because the markets never go down. We all know that the markets are never going to go down again. That's why you see this kind of action. Now, we're not, again, we are not saying that the run is over. What we're saying is that you can see the difference in the buyers, the difference in everybody, the difference in the entire attitude is now one of that we will never go down. And the tax plan is great. And look at what the companies are giving back. And look at what this is doing. And look at what Apple's doing now. And now they're supporting some of the policies. But at the end of the day, what we'll see is the same old washout we always see, because it's never going to be this easy. It's always going to be the same thing. It's going to be the big monster trap to get it in. We've got so many things to talk about the Fed and what they're going to do and their overall right now. Make no mistake that this is a Fed-driven rally. This has been a Fed-driven rally from the beginning. And yes, everybody will tell you right now that we're seeing great growth and some things, and there is some good things going on. Again, I'm not saying there's not some good things going on. There are some very good things. We have seen a little bit of a hike in wage growth. That's a good thing. We have seen some better jobs show up. That's a good thing as well. But you're pricing things in as if the money will always remain cheap. You are pricing things in as if the markets will never take this into consideration. And that's where you have to start to think about when is it time to start to take care of my positions. Well, the first thing is one of the things that you should always remember is that if you learn how to hedge your portfolio, then you never have to worry about the problems of a market meltdown. If you learn how to take advantage of the markets the way that they allow you to do so, if you understand it, then you're always in a position to defend against and don't have to make that key decision when our market's going to move. I mean, we've seen the consumer discretionary stocks are getting hammered. Why? Because everybody's got the greed factor going on, because we're going to the moon. And you talk about the fear of missing out versus greed, okay, versus I'm worried about a collapse. Well, that's what's happening. But greed always wins because it comes back to the money, all right? It's a simple deal. And now that you've got our wonderful Federal Reserve, they're such a wonderful group of folks that have a great understanding for common sense and how the markets work, that they continue to worry about keeping money cheap. Now, while you were sleeping, we saw the dollar get pounded. All right. Now, why is the dollar getting pounded? Well, number one, it's getting pounded because that's the Fed is trying to control interest rates. One of the ways they can do it is by keeping a cheaper dollar. If the dollar gets out of control, that is an artificial rate hike to begin with, not to mention that all of a sudden, a funny thing happened the way of the forum, the 10-year notes are now trading over 2.6, a 3-year high. Mortgage rates are now at like 4.25. You know, those are really low rates, but compared to where we've been, they're really high rates. And it has not had any effect yet whatsoever on the markets. But what we're going to see, in my opinion, is you've got the financial stocks, the banks, all pricing in a rate hike. Now, if the rate hike comes, that will be good for the banks, not so good for the borrowers that have already borrowed money based on rotating interest rates. All right, it will take away some of the valuations. It will take care of a lot of things away from the market, creating that eventual sell-off. Now, again, when is it going to come? There's no way to know that. But you can see by the tape action that it's getting closer. Right now, you would say it's almost on a teeter-totter, and it could go either way. And I expect the markets to make a big move either way. And it could be both. It could be a spike up and then a fall apart. It could be just go down. Again, one of the things we want to remind you is that markets go up and markets go down. And a good sell-off is actually more healthy than not. And we are not telling you that the stock market is going to disappear the way we know it, because we've seen these moves. And remembering that the markets go up 8% year over year, just not every year, is the thing you always have to keep in the back of your mind. So you make sure you're with strong fundamental companies, that you're in for technical reasons, and then you're hedging them so you don't have to worry about all this. But you've got a bunch of people now convinced, for example, that oil is going to the moon. All right. Now, crybabies at OPEC who manipulated and orchestrated this whole big run, and it took them over a year to get it going, have now convinced us that there's going to be, a shortage on oil, and oil should start to rise. And somebody had said to me that they would see oil in the 70s or 80s, and I said, okay, great, but I would more likely figure to see oil in the 40s. In fact, I'll bet, and I'll bet through my trading as well, that oil sees 40 before it sees 70. So, you know, I'm giving 2 to 1, right? It's at 60, it's at 65 actually. So it's $5 up that I'm taking against $25 down. I think that's a good bet. That's my personal opinion. You know, you've got all of this manipulation from OPEC and from everybody else, and I think I don't foresee, we didn't magically get rid of all this oil. You'll see charts and graphs saying, look at the drawdowns, and I say, okay, well, that's all artificial anyways. Again, this goes back to the manipulated world created by our friends at the Federal Reserve, okay, that continue to try to control what's going on with the money. And of course, what do we know about the money? We know that the money is been able to be manipulated through the currency wars. We know that they're keeping the dollar down right now because it's the only way that they can continue to run that legalized Ponzi scheme that has been designed and developed by the Federal Reserve to print money, to satisfy old debt. And of course, we see how it's not working. And we also know that very soon here, the Fed, as is part of the usual, will puke it up and will go from not being able to raise rates, where interest rates will get away from them, and they'll spike higher, which could be the eventual cause of the potential sell-off that we all think is going to come and deal with. Now the question is, will you know what to do when the stock market does start to break? And will you be able to handle the pressure? And those are a couple things we will talk about when we come back from the break, right here at Bubba's Bottom Line. We're going to step out and we'll come back and talk to you more about what's going on. And also, don't forget my opinion piece at the end. This is Bubba's Bottom Line, Todd Bubba Horwitz, and want to remind you to check out our highschoolinvesting.com website. We are looking to raise a little bit of money through Patreon, and that's patreon.com/Bubba Trading. We've been doing this for 7 years, and of course I have financed it myself personally for that period of time. Now I'd like to expand a little bit farther, and I'm looking for your help. And of course, if you'd like to help, I have made it very clear that I will offer the high school curriculum. You can take it yourself, so you can get some education for yourself based on what those kids are learning. And the other thing that I offered is that we're giving a special for our Futures Advisory program, and you can either make a donation to Patreon, and you'll get 1 week free of our Futures Advisory service, no credit card, you don't have to commit to it. I give you 5 days free, or you can get 5 days for $5. Either one, you got to email me, but we're going to let you check it out to see what you think, because again, I believe futures is the coming wave, and I think that you'll like it and you'll benefit from it. Don't forget, the Bubbas Show every day at LibertyTalk.fm from 4 to 5 Eastern Time, new time, 4 to 5 Eastern Time, the Bubbas Show. And we're going to get back to the show right after this, and here we go. Welcome back to Bubba's Bottom Line, and Todd Bubba Horwitz with you here. And so we had asked a couple of questions before we went to the break, and you know what to do when the stock market falls. How will you handle it? And I say that you should learn how to hedge your portfolio, and then it doesn't matter. In fact, those who are hedged and understand hedging like when the markets go down, because they get to buy more stock. Okay, they get to add into their position by buying at the bottom and selling at the tops, because you can use some mathematical equations by using options to put yourself in the position to compound that portfolio. But make sure, again, if you're a pure investor, then you cannot worry about the bumps and the grinds in the markets. Markets will typically rotate higher over time, and again, you cannot try to time it. If you do, you will lose your potatoes. All right? Valuations are very high, and the valuations are high based on low interest rates. Now, if interest rates are going to stay low forever, then valuations are fine. But does anybody really believe that? Have you watched the bond market recently? Have you seen the futures market right now? The bonds are getting hammered. We've been all over it, because for the CME, I do this report twice a week, and I've been calling for these lower prices, and here we are. They continue to go down. And I see no reason to believe that they're going to go higher. And I think that that's one of the things about the fixed income market. And I think most of us don't understand that the fixed income market, which is the bond markets, is the biggest markets in the world by not a little bit, by at least 10 times. Okay, so they have a lot of power, and I think they're going to start to push these rates up. All right, so remember, all right, to watch that, because that's the correlation. If you believe in that this is a Fed-driven market, and now you're hearing that the fundamentals are getting better, and again, listen, things are getting better, but there are still many issues out there, and we're still not really getting back down to the middle class. And of course, you've got what I've been framing as the financial revolution, right? The cryptocurrency space, in Bubbas' opinion, in my opinion, is a financial revolution against governments, central banks, the Fed, because I think people are tired of having the government take their slice out of everything that you do with this centralized banking system, with their ability to print and create more money out of thin air, with their ability to run a legalized Ponzi scheme. And I think the cryptocurrency world is saying to you, this is our 1776, this is our revolution. We are going to get around the Federal Reserve. We're going to get around the manipulation of governments and central banks. And we're saying, screw you, we're not going to be involved. And all of a sudden, you've got Jamie Dimon, who changed his tune, all right, about the cryptocurrency. Now, one of the things I always say, and I will warn, all right, whatever the big banks say, usually they're doing the opposite. Now, I know that there was supposed to be a deal between somebody in Goldman Sachs about getting into either the blockchain or whatever, and Goldman Sachs said no as they were developing their own. All right, one thing we know about the banking world is they may say it's a scam and it's a bubble, but if they can make money, they're going to be in there. And I assure you that we will find some of this stuff in their balance sheets as they've been playing the markets and as they always play the markets. So let's not think that they're not in. Now, is this the big bubble? Everybody wants to make Bitcoin out to be the big bubble. Now, is it? I don't, again, I don't know. I would say that Bitcoin is a bubble, but I would say that Bitcoin is real. I would say that the cryptocurrency world is real. Now, is it going to be laid out exactly as we see it today? That's something that I can't say. But I believe that, again, this goes back to that this is a financial revolution, a way to get around the central banks, a way to get around the destruction of your dollars, all right? Because again, remember, every time the Fed does something with the dollars, anytime they create more money, they're really just taking money out of your pocket. So now it changes because of this alternative crypto space. Now again, will it be Bitcoin? Based on what I've learned, my answer is no, it will not be the Bitcoin. Right now, the way I hear it is Ethereum is the #1 thing for, for the #1 cryptocurrency. But again, I don't know enough about that part of it. But I do know that when I get involved, and I have gotten involved recently, that the fees on Bitcoin are very high, and they're not as high on others. But we'll see how it plays out. In the meantime, you have a true financial revolution. You've got some overall interest, and you've got people now getting involved through the investing side, or at least talking about it through the investing side. And I think that that is a big issue as well, okay? You've got others starting to take it. Patrick Burns from Overstock.com was one of the first big ones to step in here. And he's, obviously a big believer, because again, this is more of a libertarian view of, make as much money as you can, and you shouldn't have to share it all with the government. I mean, it just doesn't make sense, okay? Your money shouldn't be devalued, and that is something, that's why you're seeing a lot of traction as more people start to understand how this works. And of course, you've seen it under a little bit of pressure. We've seen gold push higher, all right? And again, you've also seen, but if you look, and let's look at the commodity space, which is most affected by the dollar's gotten absolutely destroyed. But yet, farmers, their products have not gone up in value. What does that say to you? Okay, that's a real problem, right? You know, you've got corn and wheat trading at levels that haven't been seen since in the 90s. All right, well, wheat has, but corn. I mean, corn, if you take out the ethanol value, is trading under $2. Okay, so I don't know. You've got so many things going on, which all of it comes back from the destruction of the free markets that didn't allow us to let free markets work. And the Fed contrived all this, which then created all these problems, which is why you've got farm products at dirt prices. Why you've got a lot of commodities at zero values right now, basically. Because, you know, for a farmer right now, coming into planting season, now we've still got a couple of months to go or whatever, but they're going to be planting at a loss. Now you think, how exciting is that going to be? The rest of the markets in the ag space, again, under pressure for no reason, but this all ties back to the ridiculousness of the people that don't have any common sense that are trying to tell us how the money should roll. And that, I think, becomes the much bigger problem. And that's another reason that you see this big reach out now into the crypto space, because, again, we're tired of being manipulated. You've got gold rushing up, which should be, but it should be somewhere near a top. You've got crude, which I believe is going much lower. I think you look for the euro currency to collapse here now that it's had this big run. I think the whole model is thrown out of whack, and it always starts with one. You know, remember, my opinion here is that you have almost the Fed and the other central banks trying to work in tandem, trying to make these things happen at the right time. And of course, as we know, they will always lose control, as they have done every single time in history, all right, that has created this bubble. Because what they've created is this big bubble that was built on free money, cheap money, that only a few could afford to take advantage of. Because again, just because it's there doesn't mean that we can all get to it. So I think what you have to remember here now is that there's a lot of things going on, and it doesn't mean that you should sell everything. It doesn't mean that you should know that chicken little, the world's coming to an end. What it means is just pay attention to what's going on with your portfolio. Continue to invest in the markets, okay, or in a little bit in Bitcoin or in gold, anything that you prefer, okay, as long as you're investing in solid assets, whether they be hard assets like gold, whether they be commodities, or whether they be stocks. It doesn't matter. If you're buying from a technical standpoint on something that you know that you happen to like the fundamentals on, and you're buying it with money that you are not going to need tomorrow. That's one of the key things to investing, okay? If you have to take money that you're not going to think about, knowing that if you didn't look at it for 10 years, it wouldn't matter. And that's the way that you have to invest into anything, but especially equities, all right? Because those are things you can set them, forget them, and hope that they go up. And if you're buying good companies, they do go up. They will have some bumps in the road, but eventually they will come back. And of course, we've seen this. And even that pig GE right now that has become just a disaster is probably a pretty good buy right now if you have money that you're not going to need in the next few months or few years. You know, if you bought 100 shares for $1,600, I think it'll be worth a lot more down the road at some point. And I think that's something that we all have to think about when we're investing. You look for a couple of things. Technically ready to buy equities, strong balance sheets. Once you pick by the balance sheet and by the fundamentals, but you buy on the technical basis. And then some things that are now, I would call cheap. Whereas GE is cheap, I don't think they're going out of business. Now, I could be wrong, but that's why I wouldn't put all my eggs in that GE basket, but I would certainly be able to buy some of it. I think that's something that we all have to think about. In the meantime, the markets continue to go higher. We think the top is coming near. We'll get more on that next week, but we're going to step out here and take a break. Bubba's Bottom Line, Todd, Bubba Horwitz, and of course, we'll come back with my opinion piece after the break. And remember, highschoolinvesting.com, looking for some help. And I do want to thank Rhonda and Warner and Melanie and John and Jack and Mary. I thank you very much for all your contributions. And Jeff, from my buddy from, I get his place wrong exactly where it is, but all you guys, I thank you for helping out. It's really going to help, and we're really looking to move this high school investing program up because, again, I do believe in financial literacy for everybody. So I thank you all for helping, and if you'd like to step in and help, that's patreon.com/Bubba Trading. And don't forget to catch the Bubbas Show every day, 4 to 5 Eastern Time at LibertyTalk.fm. Welcome back to Bubba's Bottom Line. Todd Bubba Horwitz with you. All right, so it's my opinion piece, and you can just imagine what I'm going to talk about today. Of course, it's the government shutdown, and who cares? I certainly don't care. I am so happy that right now that we have a president like Donald Trump in office right now. All right, and again, you can like him, you can hate him. This is not a political message, but he is the one guy I think that is not going to go ahead and try to make a bad deal to keep the government open. You know, for years, we've had this debate for years about the government shutdowns and then the continuing resolutions and all the crap. Do you realize the time and money these guys are wasting each and every day for nonsense? Is there something wrong with me that I worry about the money that they're wasting on trying to negotiate out this deal? We know that everybody tries to tie something to the deal so they get theirs. And I think that's the wrong way to get it done. And I think that's why I think that right now with Trump in office, you're not going to get some piece of crap bill tied to this opening of the government. And quite frankly, let them stay closed. All they are is money burners. They're between Schumer and Pelosi. And again, I'm not going to say that it's only the left. There's plenty on the right that are all full of it as well. But my point is very simple. I'm tired of watching them destroy America and try to get people to believe in nonsense. Nancy Pelosi, worth over $200 million, talking about the crumbs that the companies are giving out. We all know that the big companies are supposed to make a lot of money, but now they're at least sharing some back. And not only are they sharing it back, but they're sharing it back because, sure, they're sharing it back because they're going to get a tax break out of it. So it's going to kind of pay for itself. But that's the way to grow business, make everybody happy. So this whole thing with trying to tie DACA to the shutdown, trying to tie everything to this whole thing is ridiculous. And of course, again, the government should stay shut down because the government is a misfunctioning company that if it was any company, it would be in bankruptcy. All right. This is the point. When are they going to actually become fiscally responsible about the money that they spend and not have to go to these special packages every time there's a crisis? You know, the hurricanes, big cost. But if you ran the government the way it was supposed to be run, like a company, okay, and left some money for a rainy day, you wouldn't have all of this Fed manipulation. You wouldn't have all these things going on if you would just put together the right program. And this is where we come to it, where the fiscal responsibility, like every other person in the world, has to take care of their own finances and does not, after you've burned out through your credit cards, you brought all the money you can, you either go to jail, you go to bankruptcy court. Well, unfortunately, our government doesn't have to do that same thing. They can sit there and not print money because they get the private corporation of the Fed, okay? So they print money when they need it, basically, and it's enough. And I'm glad they're shut down because there's no purpose for them to be open. All they do is know how to burn through cash and not run anything. It won't have an effect on the stock market. It won't have an effect on you right now. And the other thing is that this shutdown is not, as they say, a weaponry shutdown, because many of the things are not shut down, and many of the things are, you know, the parks are open, and some money will still get paid out to some, including to service our debt. But in the meantime, I think we have to stand firm here and not let, in this case, the left, because it could have been the right, but in this case it happens to be the left, and make a decision and not let them tag in another expensive bill that's only going to raise the debt of what we've got. It's enough. There's at a point in time when you have to say it's enough debt. It's time to see if we can get the country back on the right track and working again. So as far as I'm concerned, let the government stay closed. Let the Schumer shutdown continue. But at the end of the day, I think Trump will come out. But again, I'm hoping that he doesn't give in. I'm hoping that he continues to stand tall and let these things work out and make them come to him. Anyways, that will do it for today's edition of Bubba's Bottom Line. It is a football Sunday. If you get this before the games kick off, we got to give our selections. Minnesota, the Vikings, and the New England Patriots. Love them. I think they win big. They take it over. That's the way I see it. Everybody have a great week. As always, thank you so much for being here. This is Bubba's Bottom Line. We'll see you next week. Have a great week, everybody. Thanks.